Hey, welcome to another episode of Behind the Wheel with Rides and Drives. I'm Harvey Briggs, the editor and publisher of Rides and Drives, and today I'm with RJ de Vera, the global customer engagement leader for Meguiar's. They're one of the world's leading car care brands. Now, before Meguiar's, RJ was the editor at SuperStreet Magazine. He's a consultant and actor in the Fast and Furious franchise. And he also, one of his automobiles was used in the film. So we'll probably ask him about that as well. He's also judged and hosted a car building competition on MTV titled Trick It Out. So RJ, welcome Behind the Wheel.
Hey, thanks for having me, Harvey. What a long title I have, huh? What's that really mean?
That's life in the corporate world, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
So
for sure.
You're continuing to stay very active in car culture with this gig, right? So tell me a little bit about Meguiar's and what they're doing to help make that car passion continue.
Sure. I've been at Meguiar's now about 10 years of my automotive career. And gosh, I started really right as I was in high school at 16 years old. So 20, 25, 27 years plus. But for Meguiar's, I was actually consulted for them before I joined the corporation. And Barry Meguiar, as you know, has always been a fan of supporting car culture, of growing the hobby. And that's something that I'm privileged to kind of be to continue doing, now more on the brand side, corporate side, versus the consulting side. So as a brand, we're always, supporting events. It's been something that we've been doing that Barry started in the 70s.
Right.
It's still something that we continue to do today. We support a lot of hot rod events, Concours events, youth events. This year, we're starting to support some Porsche events. We physically go and set up activations at about 70 plus events a year. It's a really big thing for us.
Sure.
And then we support another 2,500 to 3,000 events with samples and things of that nature. So that's probably the top of mind thing that we do, where we really interact with car culture. We do a lot of trainings at the office, free trainings. We have a thing called Thursday Night Open Garage, which of course is not happening right now, and free Saturday classes where we really invite people to learn about car care. Just because you're into cars, sometimes you might not know what to do from a car care perspective. So, the two do intertwine together.
Sure.
And then in my role as kind of the lead of PR and digital marketing, we try to do a lot of things with influencers who's actually managed by someone else, but, to kind of really engage with them and reach out to new audiences. We try to do a few things with some video game companies, and it's really a lot about sparking that curiosity and love for car culture. Actually, later this week, where the coloring sheets are a big thing for as you shelter at home. So we have a partner who does a lot of automotive design and rendering. So we worked with him and a couple of our other partners and did some coloring sheets for some real cars, and then turning them into kind of 3D rendering line art that people can color in either as a grown-up kid or with their kids at home. So we're always trying to find ways to really plug ourselves in authentically within the culture. I think the word authentic is a overused buzzword, but we really try and live it if we can, and we try to do things that we feel will resonate, with us as car fans within the company, and then of course the hobby and the culture as a whole. So it's one of the funner things of my job. I do a lot of different things, but that's the one that I enjoy the most.
Great. So let's talk about you for a little bit.
Sure.
One of the fascinating things I think people get about the business is, there are these companies that they know, but they don't know the people behind the companies. And that, they're, whether you're talking about GM or a company like yours or whatever, they're passionate car people throughout this business. And you're one of them. So tell me where that passion first came. When you were a little kid, what was the influence that brought you into car culture?
Sure. I think for me, it started pretty early on, just being a male playing with Matchbox cars. I think that's where it really started. But I played with all sorts of things, but mostly planes and cars. And then I got into racing RC cars for a little while. And I think that really ignited kind of this tinkering. I would play with the shocks and the spring rates and the oil and the electric motors, which then led to real cars later on. And my older brother, who's 7 years older than me, he had some friends that were really into the early movement of modding Japanese import cars in the late 80s and early 90s. And so I ended up meeting them and being mesmerized by that whole movement. And so, at 15, I started buying parts for a car that I didn't even have. I was working in the summer full time and then part time while I was in high school. And then luckily my mom, blessed me with a car that she leased for me, a Honda, that I of course started modding as soon as I got my license. So it kind of stemmed from there,
Right.
and it kind of just skyrocketed. Like you said, I was an editor at SuperStreet, and that's how I paid my way through college. And then from that kind of led to a bunch of other things.
Cool. So tell me about that first car. What was it? And
Sure.
what'd you do to it? What'd you?
Yeah, it was an Acura Integra. I had been saving up to buy a car, what would have probably been a $3,000 to $4,000 Honda Civic, because my mom was working her butt off to do what she can for me and my brother, but we grew up, pretty middle class, lower middle class, and I thought I was gonna have to, buy my own car. But she ended up selling my brother's car because he was into DJing, gave him a station wagon, and then leased me an Acura Integra. So it was much more than I had ever hoped for, but because it was leased, it was kind of affordable. So the first things I did, back in the early 90s, you put wheels on, you put a stereo system in, like subs and whatnot. And that was really the first thing. And then I started to really get into Japanese tuning, and I would go to the Japanese market that was local to me, and I would buy these magazines that were all in Japanese, but they were all about fixing up cars that were, of course, local in Japan, or the Japanese domestic market. So it was called Option Magazine, and so I found a couple of shops that would import parts from Japan for the vehicle that I had, and I started to take Japanese in high school so I could read some of the characters and understand, like, oh, this they make an exhaust for my car. It says it here in Japanese, and I started to learn all the designation codes and whatnot. So that's how I really, really got into the idea of modding and customizing and taking, a factory car and using it as a canvas to kind of live out my personality a little bit more. And so I really started to get deep into it. There were some local import drag racing events that really started in California and in LA specifically, as well as import car shows. I was at the very first one back in 1995. So it was a very big part of the movement. I really enjoyed it. It had to do with just more than just cars. It was a little bit of an Asian American kind of subculture, back in the early 90s, and it tied to a bunch of other things like dance competitions and some music, some music festivals and things of that nature. So it was this whole little world, as a young high school, early college student that I was just entrenched in and loved to be a part of, and really wanted to do my bit to kind of expand it.
Sure. Any fun stories from that era? Anything particularly memorable? Either.
Yeah, oh man, a few that would probably get me in trouble. That isn't the best to talk about, but I mean, back in those days, there was a lot of street racing, unfortunately, because there was no real avenues for for a young kid with a Japanese import to really take their car and kind of take it to the track. There was a series called Battle of the Imports that ended up starting, but as more people wanted to take their cars to the track, a lot of the guys that grew up street racing ended up building professional drag cars, and then we started to do more events, not just in LA, but in Sacramento, and then other series opened, and then we would have races all throughout the country. One in particular was Naira, which was bought by the Peterson Publishing, which owned SuperStreet, which is how I really got to be on the Fast and the Furious, and I know we'll talk about that later. So those are some of the most interesting stories. I mean, the culture. I remember going to the very first import car show and just feeling somewhat at home, because before that time, the only car shows that you could go to were really lowrider shows, and that, the Japanese tuning style just didn't really fit in that world. So um, it was it was really cool to kind of, when you're into some sort of movement or some sort of subculture, to have to get to a place where you can share that love with other people who are into the same thing.
Sure. So when did you realize that you could turn this passion into a career?
It wasn't until much later that I realized that I could turn this passion into a career. Going into college, I went to UCLA as an engineering student, and I really thought I, um, would end up at an OEM as an engineer. I didn't know how else to follow a career path in car culture or automobiles outside of engineering. I really wanted to design cars. I didn't have the talent to get into art center. But then as I made my way through college and worked as an editor at SuperStreet, I started to see some new avenues of where I could work and kind of take my career. So I'd say, probably about junior year in college, my editor, Matt Pearson, had recommended that certain companies talk to me about what parts they could make for what cars and what cars were popular. He pulled me aside and said, "Hey, Archie, you can get paid for this. It's consulting." And I was like, I just want more people to be involved. And of course, the Fast and the Furious came around right around that time, and a few other. I had gotten a chance to speak to American Honda and some of their optional equipment people in that department, and really just explain. I think at the time I was probably 19 or 20 years old, why we loved Hondas and Toyotas so much, why we were modifying them, and what we were doing, like what parts we were buying and what we were seeing. And we were really kind of the first kind of tastemakers and influencers for that particular category in the early 90s. So right when I started to realize, like, oh, wow, a couple of people forced to pay me. And I was just like, I just want you guys to be involved. They're like, no, RJ, we have to pay you. That's when I kind of knew, I was making money as an editor. That was also kind of an aha. I was selling parts out of my mom's condo at the same time, doing whatever I could to make money to put back into my car. But right around, like, as I was graduating college is when it became somewhat evident that I could do something in car culture, although it was still very murky what that was going to be. But I didn't have to go be an engineer or some other profession that in some industry that I didn't really care about. I knew I could do something within the space, whether it was product development or marketing or doing being an event promoter, all of those things that I actually had kind of done when I was younger. My brother was a DJ, so I was promoting clubs, and it was learning some of the things I learned in those days, but just applying it to car culture specifically. So that was probably in my early 20s when I kind of, knew, like, okay, and told my mom, like, hey, I'm just going to try this out. And it kind of freaked her out, but, thank God my mom was super supportive. And she said, if you love it, then go for it.
Sure. So you started on that event editorial side of things.
Mm-hmm.
How does what you learned there translate to what you're doing now?
I think the biggest thing I learned when I was an editor, there are a couple of things. One was, how to be a good storyteller. And I think if you're going to be a good marketer, it's important that you learn how to be a good storyteller, and you're able to tell stories that have an emotional connection much more than just project features and benefits. When I jumped on to the Meguiar's team, I really felt a calling to it, because Meguiar's as a brand, we're more than just car care, right? We're really about supporting the passion that people have for cars, and we tell a lot of stories in a lot of the things we do. Yes, we make pretty good car care product that we're very proud of, that we feel is very premium and kind of top of the game. But beyond that, there's a lot more to that, right? There's a lot more that goes into enjoying your car and creating memories with other people. So as an editor, I kind of learned that early on. That was one of the training grounds for me on how to become a better writer, how to become a better storyteller. And I think the second and more important thing is how to build relationships. It became really important to me to go out and find stories to share and build relationships with people, so I could share their story, and kind of gain their trust that I would tell their story in the right way. There was really no digital in the early 90s, right? So everyone really relied on print, and it was the way that people got their brand story out or their personal story out. So it was really important as an editor and a journalist to really try to capture that essence, right? And to be able to do that, you really had to create a relationship and hopefully open the door and let's allow people to kind of come to you and open up, because the best stories is when someone shares something that's more personable, right?
Right.
And so it was really important to learn that skill set to really how do you build a relationship, how do you build comfort with someone. And so those are the two main things I think that I really took away being an editor at SuperStreet and Peterson Publishing.
Cool. So tell me a little bit, let's talk about Fast and Furious for a little bit. How did you get involved with that? You were at Peterson at the time?
Yeah, so I was at Peterson. They had just bought an import drag racing series called Naira. I was working for a guy named Craig Lieberman, who was the race director, and I was the car show manager. So I put together all the judging format for the car shows, judged the car shows at all the events. And somehow Universal Studios had found Craig, and they had him read the script for the Fast and the Furious, which was actually called Red Line. That was the working title for people that don't know. So Craig read the script. They asked him if he'd jump on as a consultant. He said yes. They asked him if he knew any young Asian Americans that grew up around the street racing scene, in particular to import cars, and he said, "Oh, funny, yeah, there's a kid that works for me, that works at this magazine here. You should come meet him." Craig happened to be in my car club as well, with his Toyota Supra, which ended up being Paul Walker's car at the end of the Fast and the Furious. And so he brought the producers out to a car show that we were showing at. They met me, and I thought it was kind of a joke initially. I was like, there's no way someone in Hollywood's going to make a movie that involves import cars. It must be going straight to DVD. And Craig was like, no, they're serious, And so I met them, and they asked me to come on board with Craig to be the second consultant, at least for the first film. And that's how I got involved. It was fun, it was when we made the first movie, it wasn't that serious. I mean, all of these actors had not been in anything really big. Paul Walker had, was the Skulls and Varsity Blues. Vin Diesel had done a few indies, I think Boiler Room and Pitch Black. So, it was really more of a popcorn summer teen film, and then it became what it was. So, but when we were making the film, we just had a lot of fun. No one really took it super serious. We did what we could. There was a lot of mistakes in the movies. The producers and the director really didn't listen to Craig and I a lot. They just asked us like, "Hey, is this really possible?" I'm like, "Yeah, theoretically, but we'd never do that in real life. But is it possible? Yeah." And so we'd go do it.
What were the big stretches there then? What were the things? Some of those.
Just a lot of the terminology. Well, the four-way drag race, which is where my character ended up being. They had asked me like, do the street races, does anyone ever race like four wide? I'm like, no. Is it possible? Yeah, it's possible if the street was big enough, and things like that. There's that in that same scene. I think Paul Walker's car, supposedly something happens and he loses control, and at that time nitrous for us was really big, and so they were asking me about nitrous, and I said, could you control it with a computer? And we kind of were toying with that with some EFI systems, DFI in particular, where we would do two-stage nitrous. And they were like, well, what if we show it like this? And I was like, no, it doesn't go like that. Well, is that possible? I'm like, yeah, kind of, sort of. And then I was like, what happens when you blow up your engine? I'm like, well, you put a hole through the block and the car stops. I'm like, well, we want to do it can't be that, we got to do this other thing. Can it be the manifold? I'm like, yeah, not really, but if you want to take the stretch, sure, why not, So things like that. But for Craig and I, our main role was really to help choose the cars for the characters, because the cars were out of whack in terms of progression and what was the right car for the right character, and help find them, because in the first movie, we rented most of the hero cars, like hero car being the main one for the beauty shots, and then we bought secondary and thirds and fourths if we had to crash them or flip them or things of that nature. So and then also all the parts, which parts could we get at a lower cost, because our budget wasn't huge, especially for the first movie. And so it was a lot of fun. I became really good friends with a couple of the actors, with the director, Paul Walker in particular. He was a true blue car guy. And I remember we wanted to use Skyline GTRs for one of the characters, but they were too expensive. So we borrowed one, but he fell in love with it. And I took a SuperStreet Mag to the set one day, and there was a Skyline in the cover. And he's like, RJ, how do I get one of these? I said, well, we can figure that out. And then he ended up buying one before the movie even came out. And that's how his love for GTRs kind of started, making the film and having one on set, and then seeing it in the mag and learning more about it. So definitely, a good memory for me, a lot of fond memories for me thinking back to that time. That was in the year 2000 when we were filming that, and then it came out in 2001, of course.
Sure. So I'm going to go back to Meguiar's a little bit now.
Sure.
You guys connect with so many different parts of the car enthusiast culture.
Mm-hmm.
What are the commonalities that you see across, everything from,
Sure.
The street racing crowd to, the Pebble Beach crowd? What are the commonalities and what are the differences in those?
For me, the commonalities really foundationally boil down to this: when you have a shared passion, it tends to unify you with someone else, right? Regardless of age or geographic boundaries or socioeconomic boundaries. It's something I saw early on, even in my life as a consultant, and what drew me to Meguiar's, which actually really helped me progress in my love for cars. Because by the time I joined Meguiar's back in 2009, I was very much into, yes, the tuning world, from anything that was an import, whether it was Japanese or European, luxury or exotic. But I didn't really know a whole lot about the concours side of the world, the hot rod side of the world. And I think as a brand, we really embrace all of that, because if it's got paint or if it's got some sort of, surface that you want to restore or maintain, we've got something for you, right? And so, I've managed different things at work, and as I've gone to different events and met many different types of car enthusiasts in many different genres, the auction world, the concours world, the Riddler Award for hot rods, the Amber Award, and then the stuff that I was really passionate about, European exotics, luxury cars, Japanese tuning cars. That really became evident to me even more so. Even I kind of realized that early on. It became even more evident as I just dealt with more and more people, was that there was, when you have this passion, this shared passion, it really, it's pretty instant when you get along with someone, right? And then everyone, breaks out their phone. What do you have? What are you working on? What's near and dear to your heart? And it's an interesting, bond that you almost instantly have. And of course, there's other industries, passion-driven industries that have that. I think cooking is another one. If you meet someone that loves to cook, whether they're a professional chef or not, instantly you get along, right? Oh, what ingredients are you loving? And cars to me are very much the same. You look at, fabricators, painters, detailers, customizers, restorers, and there's always something to learn from everyone else. And that to me is really, the essence that makes me really love this industry that we're in. Mm-hmm. Where you could just meet someone and really get along with them like in an instant.
Cool. So when it comes to car care itself, what do people get right and what do people get wrong?
Well, it depends on the level of familiarity. There's a lot of myths out there. We have a saying, right product, right technique. That's what it's really all about. It's really about having a great experience. A lot of people, unfortunately, don't read directions. Shocking, right? And I think that's what they get wrong, because even a certain, let's call it a wax or a compound or some interior cleaning product, every manufacturer makes them slightly different. So it's really important to read the instructions, but a lot of people don't. So, that's one of the things, and really understanding which products affect which things. Wheels is one that a lot of people get wrong all the time because they mistake what type of wheel they have. Well, it's a chrome wheel. Well, no, it was a polished wheel. No, but it's shiny. Well, that doesn't mean it's chrome. Or sometimes, people don't realize to get rid of, let's say, squirrels or scratches, they should use a compound, but they clay it. And they're like, oh, well, I thought the clay was going to remove this rail. It's like, no, that's to remove other things.
Mhm.
So, it's all those little things that is really important for brands like us to really, try to put the right information out there so people do have a good experience, so they keep coming back, right? Because the instance you have a bad experience, you don't want to do it anymore.
Right.
So there's all these little nuanced things. It's really not rocket science, but you got to do a little bit of research to really understand how to tackle the problems that you might, or the challenges that you're having from a car care perspective.
Sure. So when you have a free afternoon or whatever,
Hmm.
and you're out for a drive, where do you like to go? Are there roads around that you escape?
Yeah, growing up in LA, there's definitely, we have great typography. So I grew up in LA. I'm now in Orange County. So when I was in LA, you'd go to Angeles Crest a lot. That was, you take PCH and go up to Malibu. In Orange County, you take PCH going the other way towards, Newport, Laguna Beach, Dana Point. There's some pretty great roads. And then we also have Ortega Highway, or the 133, um, which kind of goes over a small, I don't want to call it a mountain range, but there's some hills to go from one side of by the coast to the Temecula area.
If I were to open your garage, what's in there?
So I'm in between cars. My SLS was my collector car. It was a Going. I'm a big Going fan. I thought I would keep it forever, but I got a good offer on it, and I really want a V12 once in my life. I'm not married. I don't have kids, and it's either now or maybe when I'm 65, 70, if I can even save up enough to get to that point. So I don't have a collector car right now, but you know, um, one of the few bright lights out of this craziness is probably collector car pricing is gonna struggle for a little bit. So I might be able to get the V12 that I've been pining for. Probably a Ferrari is what I'm gonna try to do. And then I had an Audi A6 as my daily, and the lease was up on that, so I went back to my roots and got a new Honda Accord with a 2-liter turbo, and I love it. Growing up with that style of powertrain really brought me back. So I'm enjoying. Those are the two cars right now. I've been talking with some friends about doing a heritage build, something that kind of reminds me of something that I built in the late 90s or 2000s, maybe something tied to the movie. And I had quite a few Hondas through the years, and I had an SX for 12 years, but they're too expensive now. So I also had an S2000, so I'm thinking I might pick up an S2000. But as of right now, just one car, which is really shocking to a lot of friends. But it's good. I've got some cash in my pocket to be safe. And then, if the right car comes along this summer, then I'll try to make a move. So we'll see. I'm sure there'll be something in the garage sooner or later. Luckily for me, I don't have that much obligation in terms of kids, where I can do some stupid things with cash that I should probably be saving or investing.
Well, depending on what car you get, it might be an investment.
Yeah, true. The SLS I bought well. I drove it for 5 years. I put 20,000 miles on it, and I sold it for what I bought it for. So it was really a piggy bank. And I'm hoping to do the same with the next car. So the timing looks like that might be the case. Of course, you've got to pick the right car with the right spec. And so, I really want an F12. It's the last Pininfarina Ferrari collaboration. I think it's a beautiful design. I think that V12, after the A12 will be different. So I think it's really is the last generation of that Enzo powered V12. So cross my fingers. That's always my goal when I get cars. Sometimes I've been lucky to be able to do that, and other times not. Like I've really lost my behind on certain ones, but I still enjoyed it, so it doesn't matter.
Good. Good. So those are all the questions I have. Anything
Sure.
to tack on the end? Anything you guys are doing over at Meguiar's, around what's going on today that you want to talk about, or yeah.
No, I think for us at the brand, it's, as people shelter at home, it's actually a great opportunity to give, you know, not only your home some additional TLC. I've Marie Kondoed my house like 5 times, I think, but your car too. It's a great time. It might be a way to get out in the garage and have a little bit of alone time. In regards to car care, if people haven't seen it, the big technology push right now is anything that has SiO2 technology or ceramic technology. Where we launched a product last year was a ceramic spray wax, and it did really, really well. Us and a couple other brands had a very few items, and now every car care brand has a full ceramic infused line, and it really does have additional benefits in terms of protection beyond carnauba and synthetic wax. And it's exciting. It's exciting to be in a category where you're bringing on a new technology platform. In a way, it's kind of like hybrid technology in automotive manufacturing and how that's changing the game. And so, SiO2 technology, or which is silicon dioxide or titanium dioxide, which is the chemistry package that a lot of us car care brands are infusing into DIY car care that came from the ceramic coating technology, which is different, of course. And so, to be part of a time whenever you're able to launch a new technology platform, regardless of what category of car culture or car care or car tuning it is, to me, it's really exciting. I've been here for 10 years. It's the first time I've been part of launching a real new technology platform. The last one was synthetic sealants, which I wasn't around for. I came on right after that. And to me, that's fun and exciting, and hopefully people are trying it and finding the benefits of it. And so we'll go from there. We're pretty excited. We have a full family ourselves this year, this hybrid ceramic family, and so far it's doing really well. So if I do my job right, along with my other marketing colleagues, it should still be a good year for the brand and for car care in general, even through these tough times.
Sure. So, well, hopefully we'll all be back out at events and on the road here soon.
Yeah, I am dying, man. I was the guy that would go to easily 1, 2, 3 cars and coffees in a weekend, every weekend, or be at some event like Amelia Island or Pebble or a hot rod event or a tuning event. And it's probably the thing I miss the most, So I am looking forward to it. I hope everyone's staying safe out there and doing the right thing, and just waiting for that day that we can go out and share this passion that we all have with each other once again.
Great. Well, RJ, thank you very much for joining us behind the wheel here on Rides and Drives, and hopefully I'll see you somewhere down the road soon.
For sure. Thanks, Harvey. Appreciate it.